Welcome into another exciting episode of The Scene. I'm your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today is author, creator, and entrepreneur Mark Firehammer. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bubba.
Yep, I just decided to jump in as I often do on these shows. Got to know you a little bit for the last few minutes. Absolutely love what I'm hearing. So before we get into the new book and all this exciting stuff that you're doing, give you a chance to kind of introduce yourself and a little bit of your backstory.
Sure. I'm a 63-year-old rebel, have been since I was a little kid. I got kicked out of kindergarten. I got kicked out of Sunday school. I was, against everything that my parents of a generation where you do as you're told, right? Do as you're told, and I've rebelled the whole way. And it's the reason why to this day I'm as happy as I was when I was 5 because I didn't let anybody push me around. And my mom was an opera singer, but not like in on a big level. She studied it in school and sang in the church choir, much like one of your last guests, Courtney. She got her start in church choirs. I was in the marching band. I was a trumpet player, and I loved it. Courtney, I think I recall, she said she hated it. I loved the marching band, the structure and the teamwork. It really just pushed all my buttons in the right way. Interesting story about the trumpet, though, to kind of interleave in my rebel background. My dad was a dictator, and when I was in the second grade, that would put me at what, 7 years old. He said, "You have 2 minutes to decide what you're going to play in the school band." And I already knew I wanted to play the trumpet, but I wanted to test how far he would go. So I waited for 2 minutes and 5 seconds. And he said, "Too late. You didn't follow the instructions." So I didn't play the trumpet that year. Did I cry like a little baby? No. What I did was I found my mother's, and you may be too young to know this, S&H green stamps.
Yeah, I'm way too young for that, Mark.
Okay. S&H green stamps, you got them when you bought groceries. And you filled a book up, and then there's a magazine that you go redeem them. Kind of like an arcade where you win tickets playing the skee ball machine and then you get a stuffed animal. I took my mom's S&H book. I didn't ask permission. Went to the store and got a bugle and spent that whole year learning to play the bugle, much to my my dad's chagrin, because he thought he'd controlled me. Well, the next year comes around and he says, "All right, you have 1 minute. What are you going to play in the band?" I said, "Trumpet." So I played the trumpet. But the moral of the story was because I didn't have to worry about the fingerings of the trumpet, I only learned to blow it and to make a good, clean tone. I was almost always first chair trumpet from that point on, all the way through my school years. So the rebel paid off by not being a crybaby and not being told what to do and how to be and how to live. So I've basically lived my whole life in that way. I went to New York to get a record deal in '89. Didn't get a record deal, but I got a record. I was sitting on a bar stool, met a third generation, I won't drop any names, but a music guy. And he was working in commercials, but he wanted to make real music. So we teamed up. They did the whole record for me, didn't charge me anything for that. That put me out on the road from 95 to 2000 full time. No manager, no album, I mean, no record company, just completely independent. I had a borrowed laptop, a dial-up modem, which you don't remember those either.
A little
Uh,
bit. A little. I'm not.
yes.
I'm not that young, Mark.
Okay. I could get online back in those days with a phone booth and an AOL account. I just dropped the thing into the cradle and boot up the laptop. And it wasn't, the phones back then weren't digital, so they were analog. You could get on the internet. So I booked my tour for 5 years. I was playing 4, 6 shows a week, 90 days in advance booked out. And I traveled Maine to Miami, living in the van, sleeping in trees. I didn't do hotel motel. I did live in outside of the structure of culture and really seeing, this beautiful country that we have from Maine to Miami.
That
That's my
sounds
pre two.
incredible.
Yeah, that's my pre 2000 story.
It sounds incredible. It was the life I wanted to live when I went out and set out for the West Coast in 2005, 2006, and stayed out there till about 2009. The 2008 housing crash really put a damper on Bend, Oregon, specifically where I was living. So when it
Right.
was time to go, it was time to go. But I got to live a small part of that life, not booking occasion, as often as you were, but living that vagabond lifestyle, right? I was homeless, I say by choice. I was a vagabond. I wasn't trying to be tied down anywhere. And I could sleep in a ditch just fine. The weather's so nice in California, much
Yes.
nicer than it is in South Dakota any time of
Right.
year, usually.
Where are you in South Dakota? Sioux Falls?
Southeast, southwest of Sioux Falls, about an hour and
Okay.
a half. So
Yeah, I know the area
that
pretty
route.
well. I was married to a South Dakotan for a few years.
Really?
Yeah, beautiful
How
country.
interesting. Yep.
Yeah.
It's absolutely love it. And thank God for the internet, because I can do what I do here and continue to support artists and to meet brilliant people
Yeah.
right from my garage in a tiny town of 1,000 people, and not change my lifestyle and not feel that I have to go chase some dream in a larger market where it just becomes much more competitive, not just in, for spaces on stages and things like that. I'm a songwriter myself, as you know, but also as just competition for resources in general, right? Living
Yeah, yeah.
around millions of other people makes everything more expensive, and I have no desire to live that life. I'm as close to homeless now as I'll ever be again, right? Like
Yes.
we got a nice little house, we got a beautiful space. I love it dearly, and while we want to improve on our living, we have a nice place, but the family's getting larger and we need larger spaces, but to live anywhere else is completely out of the question.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have the right attitude about you really control your buying into the culture's meme of more, accumulate more wealth, more, more, more,
Accumulate
more.
more debt is more like it, Mark.
Yes, yes. I am completely debt free in my 60s, and everybody that I know my age is carrying tons of debt from a lifestyle that many of them live beyond their means. And, um, no judgment, but I don't know that I would be as happy as I am if I had to manage the stress of always looking. Do you watch South Park?
No, I don't have cable TV, Mark.
Oh, okay. Well, good for you. Good for you. They have this phrase, I got to make my nut. And that's you got to make, whatever your debt is, you got to make your nut. And I think I'm emotionally really stable and calm and happy because I've never had a very big nut to make, right? I keep it reasonable so that my life is more about the experience from day to day rather than the working to buy something else, even if what I'm buying is an experience.
Well, and most of what I wanted to do in my life was the experiences. And I learned at a
Yeah,
very early age that I don't have to pay for the experiences. I have a guitar.
just go.
Yeah, I have my ins, and now I have this podcast, and even more so now because I have something that serves others, right? That I don't need to be self-serving in that way. That I
Yeah.
can show up and go, hey, we'd love to film content, at the Sturgis Buffalo Chip, and they said, hey, here's a wristband, hang out, have a great time. So,
Yeah.
yep,
Yeah, there's a
lived
key right there.
experience. We're all about it.
Yeah, there's a key right there, Bubba. You kind of hit the nail on the head for me, is that creative people can find a way to make their way doing whatever it is that's creative that they do, and that always feels good. As long as you don't get completely tied into the industry that is around your creativity. My music trip to New York was a perfect example. I went for a record deal, and when I got there, I realized I don't want a record deal. A little story if you want to hear it. I went undercover as a butler in 1990 for Sony Music. I was serving Tommy Mottola, president of Sony Music, his breakfast, lunch and dinner. He was on the 53rd floor. That's the year he married Mariah Carey, I believe. And so what it showed me was I was inside the music business. I was in the A&R meetings. Pearl Jam was coming up. They were getting big, and the way they talked about the artists, they weren't even really human. They were just a commodity, and they didn't have a whole lot of respect for the creative process. And that's when I'd realized that the music industry was run by attorneys and accountants, not singers, songwriters, performers. And I was like, I don't want any part of that. So
Yeah,
that's,
long
when I
gone
headed
were the
out.
days of David Geffen believing in an artist or a
Yes.
friend and doing that, and so many other producers. I was very fortunate to work with a friend of mine who produced two of Tom Petty's first two albums.
Oh,
He
good
worked for
stuff.
he worked for Shelter Records. He didn't get the name rights, but he got the royalties. So he lived a very healthy life and a
Yeah.
very good life. But I mean, the guy was on the Sunset Strip in the late 70s, early 70s, I guess, in that time frame. Worked with Leon Russell, actually moved Leon Russell's studio from Oklahoma out to California to be part of this. So a tribute to my friend Max, who's gone now, but the stories, man, the
Oh, God
stories.
bless you, Max. Yeah.
But it just wasn't that anymore, right? And that's kind of why he had faded out of the music business by the late 80s and 90s, because exactly like you said, the business was what it was about, and it hasn't changed much since then. I mean, now it's just Spotify kind of taking from the little people to get them to bring their listeners onto the platform, and then not even be served the people that they came to listen to's stuff. They're
Right.
being fed the
Right.
same top 40 stuff that they've always been fed. So the disillusionment remains the same for independent artists now as it was 30 years ago, Mark.
Well, I've dodged that bullet, my friend, because I'm not interested in being famous or being a star. I never made records to sell records, even though from 1995 to 2000, I did the math the other day. I sold about 7,000 records. And if you do the math, that's four records a day. And in 1995, 80 bucks a day for merch for a guy that didn't have any expenses other than gas in the tank, that was pretty good. That's $30,000 a year.
Back when gas was a buck something a gallon
A
too.
buck a gallon. Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. When you went west, young man, from Dakota to Oregon with your guitar, were you in a van?
Girlfriend's car, and then girlfriend took the car back to South Dakota after like a
Shit.
month or so. So then it was just like, okay, I guess I'm out here. And thankfully for me, I read Jack Kerouac's On the Road as
On
an
the
18
road.
year
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
That probably, I mean, that drew me out there. I grew up as a Deadhead. My parents, took me to a Dead show when I was like 3, right? Still vivid memories. The name has changed, but it used to be the World Music Theater in Tinley Park, Illinois. I
Yep.
forget what it's called now, but the building is still there. They still host it. Giant outdoor amphitheater. And they had me out in the lot, and then we got to watch on the big screen. And so always being around that culture, right? And that that 60s hippie culture kind of being, the West Coast was Mecca, San Francisco being that, but San Francisco was already too, I knew it was already different. So I kind of
Yep.
landed on the coast, landed in a little town like Bend, which was at the time like 90,000 people, which was just big enough, right, to where I felt, a part of something, but small enough that I didn't feel overwhelmed. But
Yeah.
traveled through
Did you?
Portland, Seattle, Eugene, down into Arcata, Northern California, bust on Venice Beach
Beautiful.
for a period of time. And yeah, I got to kind of do it all and see it all in a pretty short amount of time because I was fluid. I wasn't trying to tie down to one spot and then like, oh, on the weekends, maybe I'll get to go and do this or that. I was like, no, if I want to go to Portland on a Tuesday,
Stick out the thumb. Yeah.
and away I went, right?
Did you busk?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's how I fed myself, Mark. That was
Yeah,
it.
yes.
So I didn't necessarily start playing shows until I kind of like I started to play shows in Oregon, but they were like, "Okay, you guys should split the tip jar." And I was like, "Man, there's 5 of us. Like this is crazy." And then
Yeah.
just some extenuating circumstances actually pushed me back to South Dakota, but I remember the first gig I booked with my dad, played lead guitar, and some guys that we knew in town.
Oh,
And
that's pretty
the
cool.
the first gig we played, they paid us 500 bucks cash and a bar tab. We probably drank $500 worth of booze too. I was like, this is the life, right? So, as a 22-year-old man and started, doing a lot from that 2009 to kind of like 2011, pushed really hard for a few years, but then I was exposed to so many other of the pitfalls of that, right? Were
Yeah,
you a
yeah.
solo artist in your touring days, or did you have a band that you were traveling with? Like what was your experience?
Yeah, good question. The first album was a full band with a horn section, the whole nine. And I tried to take them out for a run. We went out for a few weeks, but because they weren't willing to make the lifestyle
Right.
sacrifices,
Right.
I said, okay, we can't do this. We can't make enough money for all these hotels and all these meals. So they all went back to New York and they did this. They were doing session gigs mostly. And then I went back out. I had the record that wasn't a perfect representative of who I was in a live situation anymore because it was me and the guitar. People still loved it and they bought the CD. I was charging $20, which was a premium in 95,
Yeah.
but it was a piece of somebody that they
And
just
20
loved.
bucks went a lot. I mean, that's 20 gallons. That's a full
That's
tank. Sell a
yes.
CD and fill the tank, man. That's an incredible story. So yes, you're very aware of all the pitfalls. I mean, and for
Yeah.
people that don't know, young artists out there just starting out, when you have a band, and there are very few instances, I know a few that are, kind of the not the norm and are the exception to the rule
Yeah.
because they're all in it for one purpose. But mostly
Right.
what you'll run into are people that just aren't as committed as you, the artist, the songwriter, is. And you're going to now be married to them, their ideas, their family, their problems.
Their
And yeah,
needs.
well, and mostly because I was 22 and my dad was in the band, so there was a power struggle there as well, where by all intentions it was my band, but because my dad was in it, anyone who was in the band would defer to him. And it's like, look, he doesn't book the gigs. He
Right. It was
doesn't do
hard for him
anything.
not to be dad.
Well, and he wasn't dad. When it's 2 a.m. and you're trying to get him out of the bar because he's hitting on 20-year-olds, right?
Oh,
That's
he's a
and
bad
shout out,
dad.
you know what? Shout out to Jim. We've had our issues over the years, but I love my dad. I loved those times that we had, but they were trials for me, right? It,
Sure,
it
I can
was
imagine.
it was, and I didn't know. I mean, I was 22, 23 years old. I didn't know anything about life. I didn't know enough. I didn't know enough about human relationships and interpersonal relationships to be able to massage things. I was very like, if you don't want to do all this, then there's the door,
Yeah.
And so I went through a lot of players. I still continue to, but now I'm upfront about it, where it's like I'll just show up in a town. My network is large enough where I know everybody pretty much everywhere that I tour. I'll just contact the professional musicians I know there and have, hired guns play with me. And this last year of doing that, Mark, has been the best year of my career by a long shot.
Yeah, you just give them your tracks on what SoundCloud or something and
It's
they
so
learn the
easy
bass
now.
part, the drums. Yeah, yeah.
It's so easy. And with technology to chort, like I don't write, I don't necessarily I can't read music. I was a drummer in high school, so I know what the notes, you know what I mean? I know what the beats are, but going up and down, I can't read that on the fly. But I can chart out chords now, and I can do some things so that most rock musicians, I'm in the rock country world, can pick it up and go. And I have a huge list of covers that are all traditional songs that have been on the
Right.
radio for years and years. So it's very easy for most musicians, I would say, to kind of fall in with that. Beautiful backstory. So many parallels, Mark. I just love it. And you to a much more successful tone than I ever did. So kudos to you for really making it and being a success story for other independent artists to follow. That's just so especially for now, because there's more independent artists now than ever before, right? That we need to see the success stories and to see people like yourself that have been at this for 30 some odd years now and have that success. But you're also an author now. And I know your debut novel just came out, but I know while it's fiction, it feels like just hearing a little bit about it, it feels like there's a little bit of truth in the story as well. And maybe some names have been changed to protect the innocent, maybe, but there's got to be some personal stories that you've brought from the road into your book, The Echo and the Voice.
Absolutely. And when I decided to do it in December-ish of last year, I'd already had the notes from the 20 years prior. I was like, okay, what do I do? Do I do an autobiography? No, because I'm not the kind of guy that can sell an autobiography.
Right.
The people aren't going, oh, let's learn about Mark Firehammer. But I had a lot to say because my songs were always, I think this is a distinction you might appreciate. I write songs because I want people to go, oh. You can write songs for people to go, ah, right? There's a different purpose of the song. So I was always the bard, telling a story, going to a place, observing the life there, and then going to the next town and retelling that story, right? So my songs all have that flavor about them. So the book is full of that. It's an allegory, and the main character is very much in alignment with the trajectory I was on for those same 40 years. And what's really cool is that I wrote 100 songs before 2000. I only released 20 of them. So there's 80 songs sitting on the table, and many of them you might be able to relate to this too, Bubba. Many of them I never wanted to record myself because we all have our instrument, right? And I didn't think many of those songs were I do not want to sing them. I'm not the singer. Well, when 2025 rolled around and I discovered tools like Suno and Moises and production tools that allow you to create a sound this yourself. I'm not asking AI to write the songs, but imagine what I want it to sound like and then iterate it until I get the end result. That's what really spurred me to Jonas's character and this particular novel because I wanted him to write the songs that I already wrote in the same environment that I wrote them. So, and I released that album about 2 weeks ago in Jonas Wilder's name, not Mark Firehammer's name. So, wherever you listen to music, just go
So
play.
Jonas, the fictional character now, who
Yes,
has been given an AI voice and has written songs. I love it. We're
yes,
having so many conversations on the show these days about AI, and
about that. Yeah,
my feelings are, I while the commercial aspect of it and the fact that record companies are going to use this to just manufacture pop stars out of fairy dust now, they've already been doing that and exploiting human beings to that effect for generations. So
exactly.
they were already taking advantage of artists. So go let them take advantage of the AI. I think real human beings are going to suss that stuff out. What I find interesting is that if you have a story to tell and you don't necessarily like your voice, or you don't know how to play an instrument, or you don't know how to produce music, now you have these tools that are available to be able to express yourself. And now Jonas, this fictional character who is kind of the epitome of all these songs and this life that you've lived, right? That you've created this character, now has an opportunity to write them for himself. I think that's a beautiful thing. I think it's an
Yeah,
amazing thing and not possible even 2 years ago.
exactly. In fact, what I did in, let's see, it's August now. What I did in July, which is when I mastered his tracks, I couldn't have done in January. The tool had not evolved so that I could create a uniform and consistent persona and then use that persona over and over again. But what I'd done is I'd produced a version of the ones that he would release that I liked the musicality, the instrumentation. I gave it the melody by singing into the device. It didn't do the melodies for me. And then once the software evolved and it was a surprise that it could do it, all I had to do was tell the new persona that I was allowed to create for Jonas to then cover those songs. Right? So go get the track I did in January and sing it as Jonas Wilder, and it came out a completely different vibe. A full rock instrumentation was pared down to guitar, piano, bass, and a single vocal. And it's like, yes, yes,
It's
this
amazing.
is my man Jonas.
Yeah, right. It's it's amazing to me, and I'm going to continue to have conversations about it. I'm sure on this show for many years to come, as it continues to evolve. But I think it's great. I think it's great that people can express themselves. Look, nobody's making money in music. Nobody's selling any records except the people that are already at the top with all the money. So who cares? Well, let's just make some really cool music with the
Yes.
tools we have available. And to me, I see it no different as when you started to have digital effects, right? And digital music started to come into the analog world of the 70s as the 70s evolved and you had more digital effects. A lot of these same conversations were already had 50 years ago, right?
Right.
And oh
Well,
well, that's
you
not
and
real music and that's not it's just music,
yeah.
and you know what? Anyone who's using AI, my only pity that I have is that Jonas will never be able to go around a campfire with his friends with an acoustic guitar and to
Right.
play these songs for other human beings, right?
Right.
And you're never going to be able to take that away. And maybe that's because that's where I started. That's where everything started for me was around a small campfire in rural South Dakota. My dad playing to all of us, and that was our TV while we lived in
Yes.
a tent for 3 months and built a basement to, get snowed in, typical South Dakota fashion.
Yes,
Um,
yes. I
that
can still
that's
play
always
them
the
around
root.
the fire, though. As long as I'm
Right,
alive, I can play
right.
them around
And
the
Mark
fire.
can now go and cover Jonas and
Yes.
How amazing. Well, Mark, I appreciate you. You've given me so much of your time already today. Tell everybody where they can find the book. Tell them where they can find the music that goes along with the book. I really feel like they go together, right? So as you're reading it, you can be listening to the songs that are being written in the book.
Yeah, in fact, at the beginning of chapters, part two, there's 4 parts, 24 chapters. At the beginning of part two, there's a QR code that you scan, and it brings up the page where they're in order of him writing them.
Very
So,
cool.
yeah, my recommendation is while you're reading the book, don't listen ahead. Listen to the song when you're in Jonas's moment. Like there's a moment he's in love with this girl,
Man,
Isabel.
interactive media, Mark. This
Oh,
is
yes.
something new. This is great.
He loses, not to give away the story, he loses Isabel, his love, his soulmate, his traveling companion to circumstance. And in the days that follow that, his first real mourning of a loss of a relationship like that, he's sitting around the campfire and he writes this song. And it's not on the album because it's not part of the story that the album was designed to tell, but it's available on the website. And you mentioned where can people find this? The book is written under the pen name J.W. Kindbloom. You could search for that, but markfirehammer.com, spelled just like it sounds, everything links there. The book,
Fantastic.
the albums, the AI music, it's all there.
Fantastic, Mark. What an enjoyable conversation this was. I look forward to continuing to be friends with you, and I cannot wait to get my hands on a copy of this book and to be able to do it. Are they just digital copies, or did you get physical printed as well?
Ingram Spark will send them anywhere, any
Awesome.
bookstore. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon, either paperback or Kindle.
But go find it at markfirehammer.com, and all the links are there for you. Mark, thank you so much for being on the program, and thanks
You're
for
welcome,
being
Bubba.
part of the scene.
Thanks for doing what you do. I appreciate you having me.
My pleasure.
All right.